Welcome back to another episode of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast, powered by ISOFIT and Firefly Recovery. ISOFIT is my go-to for all things isometric strength training. For more on ISOFIT, be sure to check out isofit.com. Episodes like this are made possible by Firefly, the official recovery provider of the Braun Performance and Rehab Podcast. For more on Firefly, be sure to check out recoveryfirefly.com. This episode is powered by Dr. Ray Gorman, founder of Engage Movement. Learn how to boost your income without relying on sessions. Get a free training on the blended practice model by following at Ray Gorman DPT on Instagram. Megan, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited to work with you today. For people who aren't familiar with you and all the amazing things you're doing in the sport of ice hockey, would you mind filling them in a little bit about who you are and all that you got going on?
Yeah, hi, my name is Megan Mckay. I am a Division I college hockey player. I'm currently in my senior year at Clarkson University up in upstate New York. I'm originally from Zionsville, Indiana, a suburb outside of Indianapolis, and grew up with four siblings, love sports, always been involved with sports, always just trying to be the most competitive athlete possible, and that's gotten me to where I am today, to being a college hockey player, kind of in the USA development program, and then with aspirations of playing for the Professional Women's Hockey League.
Absolutely. That is absolutely incredible. It makes me think back to some of the other conversations we've had around women's ice hockey earlier this year with people like Josie St. Martin up at Minnesota Duluth, for example. And it's always interesting to me because typically when you say hockey and women's, people think of field hockey before they think of ice hockey for one reason or another that way. And I think the sport is super fun and exciting to watch and get involved in that way. I'd love to hear more about what's kind of going on for you right now within the sport, because I feel like a lot of people don't know, what are the differences between men's hockey and women's ice hockey, what goes into the day to the day and the training and the D1 level of women's ice hockey and so on that way. So just kind of walk me through what your typical like day to day looks like in, your role on the team and so on that way.
Yeah, I think women's athletes and especially women's hockey players are some of the most athletic people I've ever met, because it does take a lot of willingness to be competitive and then also sacrifice and physicality that you don't see in a lot of other women's sports. When you compare it to the men's side of the game, we're training the exact same every day. The only difference on the ice is we can't have these open hits. So on a day-to-day for me, while at Clarkson, I'm waking up early in the morning. We have our team lifts. That's, focusing a lot on speed development, explosive work, because you're not training to become a bodybuilder. As a college athlete, you're training to be explosive, to be quick, to be able to move weight quickly and efficiently. So we do that in the mornings. And then for me as an MBA student, I've got a lot of classes because it is all meshed into one year. So after our 7:30 workout, I have class at 9:30 and three classes, hour and a half long, 9:30 basically to the afternoon, and then we're right into team practice. We always get in a good warm up and then have about an hour and a half of, on ice drills, skills work, games at the end. And by the end of the day, it's like time for recovery. It's time for ice baths, seeing our trainer for rehab purposes. And then by then it's already dark out and you're eating dinner and you're doing it all over again.
That's amazing. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of commitment and dedication that way, and it's an absolute grind. And I think it's always interesting because sometimes people look at sports and I don't think they really fully appreciate what all goes into what they see on game day or when it's time to perform that way. They don't see the kind of other half of the iceberg, if you will. And that's something that I always appreciate hearing from athletes, is just how much it takes to go into these performances and things that we see and kind of know the sport for that way. It sounds like for you, you're doing a lot of different things, from lifting to, eating right, getting to bed early. It sounds like this is really a process of discipline to be at this high level of sport. And it's not something that just anyone can do, for lack of a better way to put it.
That's extremely important to me. I mean, the nutrition side of things, the balance, that's something every year, when it comes to recovery, when it comes to lifting, when it comes to my on ice development, like the extra work I'm doing with skills and how I'm eating, how I'm hydrating. That's something that I take very seriously and kind of see being a college athlete as just a semi-professional athlete. You're doing the same thing on a day-to-day. And that discipline is extremely important if you want longevity, if you want to make it to the professional level, especially staying healthy. That can easily lead to getting injured if you're not focusing on those things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's one of those things that everyone likes to get caught up, and maybe it's just because I wear a physical therapy hat, in these concepts of injury prevention and injury management and so on that way. But I think it comes up quite often about the prevention side. And I think that, this concept of having that internal check engine light, if you will, of understanding what your body is trying to tell you and what you need to do accordingly can really help mitigate a lot of those situations. And a lot of the times it comes back to, wow, I'm feeling absolutely exhausted today. Maybe that's my sign to scale my intensity back in training a little bit and actually like get some sleep because I slept like dog crap last night. Or maybe it's like, hey, like I'm freaking hungry right now, which, for me, I always am. And it's like, maybe I should actually like eat something and fuel a little bit more, right? Like these little signals that the body is telling you on the day to day are really trying to like guide you towards the actions that you need to take. And I find a lot of athletes are just not really in tune with them as much as they should be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listening to your body is the most underrated skill possible. There's so many science metrics out there, so many fitness wearables. I love looking at the technology because it tells you so much, but then it does tell you so much that some people just forget to look internally. Like, yeah, if you're hungry, eat. If like you're feeling that you need more carbs in your system, or you're not getting enough sleep, but maybe your watch is saying your recovery is super high, it's all basically internal. It's how you feel, and it's working through that process as well. Like eat something different, see what helps fuel you, what gives you more energy. It's an experiment, especially when it's your day-to-day life. You want to find what fuels your body the best and gives you the most energy to be an elite athlete and sustain performance.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with that. And you mentioned the technology piece. I'd love to hear more about kind of like what technology do you find the most valuable to you? What kind of things do you like and actually track yourself? Because a lot of times people get so caught up in this tech world that I think sometimes we miss the boat on things. But by the same token, I think it's also important to have an understanding of these different metrics and physiological variables. But I don't think they're all made the same. And I think it's important to understand what is actually worth tracking and provides value and benefit to athletes.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm very competitive. So the fitness wearables I love because it kind of motivates me to do more. And that's something I've been doing since I was a little kid, is just trying to do the most, put in the most work of anyone else, beat everyone. So when you're looking at like the whoops, there's different teams, there's groups in there that, you're challenging yourself against other teammates. And I always thought the strain score is interesting because that's how much strain you're putting on your body. And then during the season, the recovery, all of that, like on a Friday for college athletes, we play Friday nights and then we play Saturday. So on a Friday night, your recovery is not going to be good going into Saturday. And if you're looking at that and you're seeing that, your strain was super high, obviously you just played 2.5 hours of a hockey game, you're not going to recover as quickly as you normally do on a weekday. And that could psychologically be a mental battle. Like you're saying, oh, my watch is telling me I'm not 100%. So I kind of steered away from that. I was like, I'm going to focus more on getting better every single day. I don't necessarily need to see what other people are doing, what their scores are, how they're doing. And I transitioned to an Apple Watch. And an Apple Watch, I didn't see as much of the analytical with the sleep data. And then I lost the Apple Watch. So I had to decide what I was going to do next. So
How
I was
did
like,
you
all right.
lose the Apple Watch? What happened?
We were rope swinging in Costa Rica with the Apple Watch on, and we did a cannonball, and I think it's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean right now. So that was
At
unfortunate.
least it's a good story.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. My parents were not very happy. I mean, it was a Christmas present gone within a month.
At least it's a good story. And you
Yeah.
mentioned the term recovery a couple times as you were talking. And I'd love to hear more about what that means and what that looks like for you. Because for some people, it involves spending hundreds of dollars a month on some of these luxury wellness clubs and hot, cold, and all these different things. And I think everyone's talking about a certain university that just put in like some kind of snow room for recovery. And like, on one hand, I think that stuff is super cool. But on the other hand, I feel like there's other maybe lower hanging fruit that can be grabbed for recovery.
Yeah, every fitness coach I've ever talked to has said nutrition and sleep is essential for recovery. And I love the technology. I'm going to keep reaping on that one. So I've tried them all, the Normatec boots, the ice baths. I think last summer I was ice bathing every single day. And that helped with your metabolism. If you're someone trying to lose body fat percentage, saunaing, cold plunging, those kind of remedies definitely help. But I think it's also getting your body accustomed to those recovery methods. So if you're ice bathing every day, suddenly it's easy to jump in 35 degrees of Fahrenheit of water. But if you're taking weeks off and then like you're really sore, so you use it, it's going to provide a lot more benefits than your body just becoming immune to it. So I personally love those kind of methods, but I've toned back on a lot of them and I focus more just on basic, foam rolling, soft tissue work, a lot of mobility in uncomfortable ranges of motion versus just sitting still stretching because I don't think you're really challenging yourself and getting into those deep spots that you're working. So that's something I've tried to focus more on is just mobility. As a hockey player, hip mobility is really important because it's not natural how we skate. That's not like a natural stride that people's hips should be going out and in that frequently.
No, it's so interesting to hear you say that because that's a very common discussion I have with people in the hockey space is the hips and hip strength and assessing the hips and so on that way. So I think it's really great the work that you do. And kind of like you, I never really felt benefit from static stretching. And I tried it over and over and over again. And, I'd pull this or, hang in this position for a long time. And I just never really felt I got out of it what I wanted. And my other question to people started to become, okay, you're telling me to start stretching all these different things. One, where does the time for that come from? And two, when do I know I've stretched it enough? Like, when do I stop doing this? And people got really quiet when I asked those questions. And I started to do more of this like active focused stuff where it's not just like getting into these positions, but actually being able to control them yourself. And I noticed so much benefit from doing that. And it sounds like you had something very similar in your space with hockey.
Those ranges of motions, like some of it, it's the most challenging exercise and you have no weight. Like I could squat, I could deadlift, but then if you're starting to rotate your hips like in an internal or external rotation, some of those like ranges of motion, it's crazy how deep you can get into a stretch.
Yeah, and how uncomfortable it gets, like you mentioned. It's like, hey, maybe this is my sign to spend a little bit more time working on this because it's clearly so important that way. And you also brought up about how skating is so unique that way and the motion and the different like plane that occurs that way, right? Like most of the times people think about like running, which is very sagittal forward and back, when skating certainly involves very different planes of motion than straight line running or some of these other things that people typically think of from a sports standpoint. What do you feel like, just with your own background in the sport, but also with your college studies and so on that way, what do you feel like has helped you the most in preparation for skating outside of just having enough hip mobility? Is there any like great exercise routine or program that you've been on, or any like advice other than just like getting the hips mobile and skating a ton that really carries with you?
I think skating a ton is so common nowadays with younger athletes. Like over the summer, kids are skating every single day. And that was something I have done a lot as well. But I started to realize that those day offs are really important for working on off ice work in a very low position. Because as a taller player, I like to stand up a lot more. And I also will kind of not be as quick and efficient if I'm standing up. So I think what's helped me the most with skating and my stride is that kind of mobility, but also by staying low. So I like working on a lot of exercises. It's almost like yoga like, or stretches, but standing still, active mobility where you're standing, you're in lunges, you're in uncomfortable iso holds, because then you're really working on that full extension while, building your quads, building your glutes to withstand such low force to the ice.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Is that something that you've always done, or did you kind of learn that from trying other things and didn't really get a similar result from it?
I kind of learned that I think over time that how important strength is on the ice. Skill development is super fun. It's fun to shoot, it's fun to stick handle, but skating is the most important aspect of the game. So if you're really taking the time off the ice to focus on that, that's something I kind of learned in college. That if I'm stronger off the ice, if I'm able to stay in those low squat positions, then when I get on the ice, I'm just that more efficient.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's always interesting to me to hear about that kind of like skill continuum, if you will, where some people will say all your practice, all your repetitions need to be done, on ice and very hockey specific and so on. But a lot of the other times I find just as much benefit, if not more benefit, from getting really good at those general qualities and opening up different ways to move and also just moving on different surfaces instead of just being on the ice more and more and more that way. And it sounds like you've experienced something similar, at least from a physical side. How about mentally that way? Because this concept of mental prep and mental skills coaching continues to come up more and more when I talk with athletes. And I just don't remember that being a common theme 5 to 10 years ago. Is there anything that you've found benefit from to really hone the mental side of your game in hockey?
Certainly, mental preparation is one of the most important parts of my game nowadays, especially entering into college. I was super physically prepared. I was super ready to go. I did all the training over the summer. I was in the gym every single day. I was skating. I was doing all the preparation that you need. Basically, had everything in my toolbox. But if the person working the toolbox doesn't know how to use the tools and isn't confident with the tools, then what's the point? So I really try and focus on my mental side. Journaling helps a lot. I think just talking to people as well, being open with your coaches, getting that understanding of, what you can bring to the game and what you're confident in and your skills and your abilities. I listen to a ton of visualization podcasts about honing your strengths. A big one is pursuing the next goal, but also staying in the present and not staying on the past and not looking at your failures and mistakes and dreading on them or dwelling on your mistakes. So that's something I've definitely tried to focus on.
How are you able to balance that concept of looking back enough to learn from the mistakes or errors that you make, but not looking back so far that you literally just dwell and live on that era of life?
Yeah, you definitely have to learn and grow. And one of my favorite shows is Ted Lasso. And the saying he uses is be a goldfish. Goldfish have the shortest memories. So, hockey's a game of mistakes. Every sport is essentially a game of mistakes. And I think you can't obviously dwell on it, but you really need to learn from it. So what I do is during the game, I'm not dwelling on any mistakes, but after the game, I'll look back at the film and I'll see, okay, this is what I did, this is what I can do better, and this is how I'm going to do it better next game. And then you move on from it. You forget about it because the game's over. There's nothing you can do anymore to change the past.
Absolutely. And then you're able to carry that same energy moving forward. But by the same token, it sounds like you don't want to look too far ahead. And it's funny because I just had a conversation with someone about this morning as we were talking, catching up on a phone call. I haven't talked in months, years maybe. And it was funny because he was like, where are you going to be in 3 years? And I was like, dude, I have no clue where I'm going to be freaking tomorrow. Like, on one hand, I like having a general plan for the future. But on the other hand, if you're not able to emphasize the current moment that you're in, I think you miss a lot of things. And I think there's this concept that I don't know the correct technical term or principle for it, but being in the moment, almost being able to step back just a little bit from where you're currently at, what's going on around you, and just kind of assess everything is a skill that I feel like people don't have as much anymore. They are either so focused on what happened previously and the back in my day, the glory days, used to bench 315 for reps in high school, that kind of crowd, or the, oh, I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be here in 5 years, I'm going to X, Y, and Z. And it's like, but what about right freaking now? Like in this moment, where are you? What is going on in your life? And I feel like that's just such a lost art and lost cause for so many.
Yeah, and having goals is extremely important. I mean, that's what motivates you to get out of bed every day. Like that's what's motivating me this season is, my goal right now, professional. I want to be a professional athlete. But if every day I'm thinking, "Oh, like I want to be a professional athlete," I'm not going to get anywhere. What I enjoy is the day-to-day, the organization, the checking off the boxes of just getting 1% better. You completed your lift, check. You got better, you got quicker, you got faster, you had fun in the moment, and you're trusting the process. That's what's enjoyable about it. I mean, we only get one college experience playing with your teammates, with your friends, and if you're having fun and you're in the moment every day, then eventually the future is going to work out. Everything works out how it should be, and there's no reason to stress about it or to just set one goal, and if you don't achieve that, just give up.
You mentioned having fun. You mean to tell me that even with the dedication and grind and the sweat equity that it takes to succeed in D1 sport, you're able to find ways to enjoy it?
Oh, 100%. I think every day I come to the rink, I never want to leave. And a lot of people assumed that I was going to burn out when I was in high school because I wouldn't leave the rink. I was there 5 a.m. till, the Zamboni driver was leaving. And I still do that almost 10 years later. And no one's ever asked me that. They've never asked me, like, how have you not burned out? Like, how do you still have fun? But I think it's just because I love the sport and I love, where it's brought me and, my family who's supported me the entire trip of the way. And, not many people get to say that they get to play a college sport or get the opportunity to lift. I mean, so many people are, fighting for their lives and, there's a lot harder things going on in the world. So you just have to be grateful for what you have.
Absolutely. And to me, it's like, where did the fun in sports go? Like a lot of the times, athletes tell me that they treat it like a job and they're kind of over it and all these different things. And it's like, when did athletes stop having fun in sport? Like, at what age do you transition out of just having fun, enjoying the game, loving every minute to all of a sudden now it's like work and job and so on that way? And I feel like we need to keep the fun element of sports. And I think the more you're enjoying it, not only the better you're going to be with the sport itself, but also the better connected you and your team are going to be as well. Because I think that ultimately dictates a lot of your success. You can be the best player on a team, but if the team is rather bad, for lack of a better way to put it, then you're not going to achieve your full potential, right? Maybe the passes aren't as crisp. Maybe you're getting double teamed the whole game if you're an attacker, or maybe if you're a goalie. Like there's one school I remember seeing that, literally every 30 seconds, the goalie was getting a shot on her. It was just like, 100+ shots every single game. Like it was unbelievable. And it's like, I think if you want to be at your true potential as an athlete, you have to find ways to literally enjoy any moment within the sport itself, but also find ways to make it enjoyable for the rest of your team so that y'all can like grow closer together. Like break out the freaking selfie stick and hit yourself a few TikTok dances or something. Like people demonize that, but I think there's a lot of like community-based value in it that people don't appreciate.
Yeah, and like the work is all done in practice and like what you're doing in the weight room. And so game days is something that I love to just let loose and have fun and listen to music. Social media is fun. Not everything has to be taken super seriously. I totally agree. It's crazy that sports has become such a task and such a, oh, you play D1 or you play D2, or I'm trying to get my kid to go to the best school possible. And, parents have become much more involved than, when I was growing up. So it is sad because sports is such a unique way of connecting with people, and they're your friends for life. So you don't want to waste a minute just stressing and worrying about the next person beside you and just always being, scrutinized for, not having fun.
No, I completely agree. And I think the more you're able to look at that game day like a fun environment, a welcoming environment, an environment that is, yes, competitive, but also like a place that, to use your term, you can just kind of let loose, for lack of a better way to put it. I think that takes a lot of the pressure off, because some of these different athletes tell me that they feel so much pressure on game day. And I'm by no means a mental health expert, but I think the more you can shift your mindset towards the enjoyment of game day, like, oh, look, I get to perform, I get to like go out and like put on for my city, so to speak, instead of just like performance stress and all these different things. And it's difficult to do, I'm sure, but like just get out there and just freaking like chop it up and have a good time with the squad.
Yeah, and energy is contagious too. Like you said, if the goalie's getting 100 shots on them in a game and you're in the D zone the whole time and you're losing and everyone's just stressed out, no one's going to be talking on the bench. No one's going to be, having fun because no one's communicating, no one's letting loose. Everyone's high stress, high pressure. But the second one person as a leader starts, having fun, getting the energy, the positivity, it is so essential and it's a game changer for a team to have success in the season.
Some of the best athletes that I've worked with are not necessarily the best from a skill standpoint alone, or even a mental standpoint alone, but they have this ability about them. I'm not sure what the right word is for it, but they have this ability that allows them to just get in this like flow state type mindset around game day, but they're also able to like channel and shift energy all the time, right? Like, you'll watch a football athlete go out there and, maybe his team is losing and he goes out and sacks the quarterback, and all of a sudden the whole team is like fired up and amped up and like big plays start to happen, right? In hockey, you might be down like 3 goals to nothing entering the final period, and the team's like, all hope is lost. But there's this certain athlete on the team that's able to just like come in and like put 2 quick goals in, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shoot, we're right back in this. And it's like, to me, sometimes the best athletes are not just the ones that are the most skilled, but the ones that are able to deliver what is needed when it's needed and shift the entire tide of the game in the sport.
Yeah, we call that in hockey for the most part the enforcer, which is it's interesting because that's something I like to call myself as well, as an enforcer, because yeah, you might not be, the person who's going to go snipe and put the puck in the back of the net, but if is in the women's game, you can have a little bit of physicality out there. And sometimes that's what your team needs. They need a block shot. They need, a scrum or a dirty battle in the corner, someone who's willing to, take a hit, take a block, to kind of change the tide of the game. And those type of players are just as important as the leader, the team goal scorer. Sometimes it doesn't come up on the stat sheet, but being a team player really pays dividends for overall success.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because you kind of brought up this concept that I hear a lot in the sport of hockey is there's a lot of different terms that people that are not familiar with the sport might hear and be like, what are they talking about? Right. Like, when you're talking about the biscuit or you're talking about chirping, which I feel like everyone knows chirping at this point, but like biscuit, or like when you say that like there was a freaking yard sale on the ice or different things like that. Is there any other like terminology that comes to mind to you that you like around the sport of hockey?
So one of them is top cheese, which is like shooting the puck top shelf. I always thought that one was like so weird. And then I think it's like the slang, like hockey players. I'm not even Canadian, but somehow I just sound Canadian when I talk to people, just I think from being in the environment and like the chirps, going back and forth at each other, like backhand toe drag, like top cheese, that kind of thing. It's just like I think the shortened sentences. It's like its own language. It's so weird.
What have been your best chirps when you're on the ice that way? Or, do you not engage in that?
I do talk a lot, but I wish I could like say it on camera what I say. But yeah, for the most part, it just comes off the dome, which is like another one. I love chirping because that keeps it loose, that keeps it fun. If you're not talking, that means you're in your head and you're overthinking way too much. So I encourage all athletes to become chirpers out there. Doesn't matter what sport you are. It helps you let loose and helps you have a little bit of fun and get in the opponent's head so you're not in your own head.
It's so funny you say that because when I was a kid, I played baseball, and anytime I would like get on base and get to a certain base, I'd always try and strike up a conversation with the person who was there, like, "Oh, how's your day going today? Fine weather for a game, right?" And it's just like that kind of stuff like throws people off. And it's like, to your point, you might as well just have fun with it. Like, we're all freaking people. We're all clearly interested in the same sport. Like, let's just like chill out and have a good time with it.
And I love talking with the refs too, just because it's good to have them on your side, especially when you're a physical player like me. Like it doesn't hurt to be a little nicer to the stripes out there. So yeah, just it's so fun, just like the atmosphere of sports and like that kind of thing. You don't get to do that, if you're at a spelling bee.
Yeah, no, if you're at a spell, my goodness. Can you imagine if they had a spelling bee for ice hockey slang?
I don't think anyone would have I don't know, the hockey IQ or the IQ around. A lot of hockey players been hit too much. I don't think they do so well.
Actually, I think it'd be quite entertaining, especially if they held it at like American Ninja Warrior hours. So we've had a few Ninja Warriors on the podcast, and one of the reasons that the show is always dark on the TV is because they film it at like 3 in the morning or something ridiculous like that. It's like, I feel like 3 a.m. on like the right Sunday morning when maybe Saturday's a good night and Saturday night hasn't even ended yet might be the great time to film something like that. Maybe that's like some TikTok content someone can make. I don't know. I'd freaking watch it.
I might have to take that on you. I'm gonna write that one down. I'm gonna get my teammates on this like a Family Feud style podium and see who the most intelligent ones are.
How have you been able to balance being a academic weapon yourself, literally getting like 3 degrees in 4 years or something crazy like that, with being a athletic weapon on the ice?
I think it just all goes down to work ethic, time management, pushing yourself to do uncomfortable things. Could it be easy? A lot of college athletes, you see it with the football field, and the football players that, they're taking the easy communication major or, they're taking the minimum amount of credits each semester so they can focus on school. But I like the Notre Dame quarterback. Right before the national championship, the night before, he was taking an exam because, he balances academics. So there's nothing to say that it's deterring your performance, that you're focusing a little more on school. I've seen women's professional players that are in law school and medical school. I think it just goes to show your personality and then your willingness to do more, and get outside your comfort zone. You don't want it to be easy. You want to challenge yourself.
Absolutely. Now, what's that process look like for you, speaking of professional, into going for pro ice hockey that way? What's that kind of transition like, and what all does pro ice hockey entail for you that way when we get there?
In North America, there's about eight expanding teams right now. So very, unique environment that's pretty new, but they're in extremely, profitable cities with lots of great fan bases. And, becoming a professional athlete is pretty much just taking the school out of it, which I think just provides more time for, development, recovery, focusing more on your personal brand, growing that, and then growing the brand for the community, growing professional women's hockey is kind of similar to how the WNBA started. It took some time. It needs to take some time to really catch its footing. So I think transitioning to professional is going to focus more on, engaging the community, but also performing at an elite level because everyone's a lot faster, everyone's a lot bigger and stronger. So that's something, I'm going to be training for every day. This season is to be a top college defenseman here at Clarkson and focus on the present there. And then I know it's all going to work out.
What kind of things do you value from your own standpoint in relation to that personal brand, like you mentioned that way? Is I find that this term gets thrown out a lot more with athletes and athletics that way is they need to have a personal brand and their identity and their mission and all these different things. Like, what does that actually mean and look like for you?
That's, the personal brand is something I've just kind of come across the past year, which is separating myself from hockey. We're not all going to be able to play our sport forever, so it's important that you have your identity outside of the sport. And so that's when I've gotten more into nutrition, to more into fitness, more into health style, and really focusing on the science of being an elite athlete. And that is all taken away from the amount of goals or points I put in a game, because a lot of athletes can stress over that, and that can be their whole identity of how good of a hockey player or athlete they are. So that identity is something I've tried to separate myself from. Be me, be Megan, be someone, the person who's creative, who's a little bit different, a little bit of an overachiever. But that's, something I enjoy doing, is like this, for example, being creative and, connecting with people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it's funny because I found some athletes struggle to be themselves anymore. And it's like they struggle to just be them in a different environment, and they struggle to solve some of these different unique creative problems that are thrown their way. And it's like, just do the thing. Like just start in motion and remain in motion, and things kind of figure themselves out. And I think as long as you stay tried and true to yourself at the end of the day, you can't go wrong. Megan, I feel like we could probably talk all day long about all kinds of different things, from hockey to training to what it takes to get to this level, how you got here in the first place and beyond that way. Is there anything we missed as we were chatting, or anything else you really wanted to share with people listening today?
I don't think so. I think just I think the biggest key takeaway from this is the importance of having fun, the importance of, finding what's best for you, listening to your body if you're an athlete, if you're not an athlete, just pushing yourself every day, and enjoying the process of, being yourself. If you're a person that enjoys being goofy, be goofy around people, be fun, be creative, and try new things, and success will come in whatever aspect that might be.
Absolutely. And for people who want to find out more about you online and so on that way, Megan, where can they find you at?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm just Megan Mckay. And then I also do TikToks a lot. That spelling bee video is going to be coming out soon. And that's Megan Mckay 03. So you can follow me on there, and hopefully one day maybe I'll have a podcast of my own, and I'll be interviewing you more, Dan.
I'm here for it. We'll link to all of that in the description below. That way, if you didn't quite catch it, you can just click there and see everything that Megan is up to. Megan, this was awesome. So glad we're finally able to do this. I appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you again. I appreciate it.